I thought I was alone. That was my first mistake. The bedroom was dim, early evening light slipping past the sheer curtains, turning everything the color of melted gold. I stood in front of the mirror, half lost in the rhythm of my routine, fingers unhooking the clasp at my back with the lazy grace born from habit. There was a hum in the air, quiet and thick, like the room was holding its breath. And then I saw him. His eyes met mine. Not directly. Through the mirror. My heart kicked once hard. He was leaning against the doorframe, still a shadow, his expression unreadable, and unmistakably locked on me. On my back, on the line of my shoulder, on the slow glide of fabric down skin. He wasn't supposed to be home yet. I hadn't heard the door. And yet there he was. Watching. I froze. Not in fear. In something far more dangerous. Awareness. We weren't lovers. Not even close. He was my roommate's brother. He was barely supposed to know I existed beyond the occasional polite nod in the kitchen. And yet, I could feel the weight of his gaze across the room like a heat lamp aimed at my spine. I should have grabbed something turned covered, but I didn't. Why didn't I? My fingers trembled slightly as I pretended to keep changing, pretending I didn't notice him. But everything I did next, the way I let the strap slide slowly, how I moved with an unnatural grace, was for him. For that mirror. Inside I was chaos. My breath caught in my throat, heart racing like I'd been caught stealing. But under it all, curling beneath the panic, was something darker. I liked it. The power. The temptation. The rebellion. I could have ended it. I should have. But I didn't. I let him look. And he didn't look away. He didn't speak. Neither did I. The silence stretched, taut, electric, coiled like a wire pulled tight enough to hum. I could still feel him in the mirror. That subtle tilt of his head. The way his arms remained crossed like he was trying to cage himself in. But his eyes gave him away. They roamed slowly, deliberately, like a man memorizing a crime scene he knew he shouldn't be near. And me? I became both the evidence and the accomplice. I moved again. Slower this time. A small shift of my weight. A turn of my shoulder that let the fading sunlight brush against my skin in soft gold. My shirt, loose and wrinkled from the hamper, hung limply in my hands. I should have put it on. But I didn't. Instead, I looked at myself, really looked, and saw not just a body but a mood. Something unspoken had cracked open between us, a doorway neither of us had meant to touch. But now it was wide open, and the air spilling through it felt warmer, heavier. I couldn't help it. I looked at his reflection again. He hadn't moved. That should have embarrassed me. Made me pull the shirt over my head and leave the room without a word. But all I could feel was a reckless pulse under my skin, beating in places I tried not to name. The way his eyes burned through the glass, I wasn't sure if he was imagining the rest, or just daring me to keep going. So I did the smallest thing I could do. I dropped the shirt. Not dramatically. Just let it slip. A whisper of cotton brushing my thigh as it hit the floor. And then I turned slightly, still not facing him directly, just enough to give him a better view, if he wanted it. He did. He shifted, almost imperceptibly. A flick of tension in his jaw. His fingers flexed against his forearm like they wanted something they couldn't have. The truth was, I didn't know what I was doing. I only knew I didn't want it to stop. This dance, this quiet, trembling line we were walking, was sharper than anything I'd felt in months. Years maybe. But then he stepped forward. Just one foot. But it cracked everything. The mirror caught the movement. So did my body. My breath hitched. I turned slightly more. Now not just offering the view but offering myself. The question hung in the air. Unspoken but loud. Was I going to let him cross that final line? And if he did, would I stop him? There was a pause, maybe 2 heartbeats long, before I heard it. The sound of his footsteps on the wood floor. Bare, slow, deliberate. I didn't move. Couldn't. Every muscle in my body felt wired to a silent current, waiting. He was behind me now, and the mirror was no longer a barrier, it was a stage. And I was standing at the edge of something I couldn't unstep from. I watched him in the reflection as he came closer. He didn't touch me. Not yet. But he didn't need to. The air around us changed with each inch he claimed. It pressed on my skin, warmed the nape of my neck, made my breath shallow and uneven. Still no words. Just the hum between us. He stood inches behind me, And I could feel the heat of him, that masculine gravity, reaching for me without moving at all. My skin prickled. My chest rose too fast. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, a wild, disobedient thing. Then, his hand lifted. It hovered, right at the curve of my waist. Not touching, but close enough that I swore I could feel the ghost of his fingertips just above my skin. His eyes never left mine in the mirror. Neither of us blinked. It was like we were trapped inside the same breath. And when he finally touched me, lightly, tentatively, as though asking a question with nothing but his palm, I didn't flinch. I leaned into it, just a fraction of an inch, just enough to say yes. His hand settled more fully then, spreading slow over my hip like he was learning the shape of a secret. I exhaled shakily, and my head tilted back slightly, not from seduction but surrender. The mirror reflected it all, the hunger in his eyes, the tension in mine. How my body softened into his touch even as my mind screamed about lines crossed, about how wrong this should have felt. But it didn't feel wrong. It felt inevitable. He leaned in. Not quite close enough to kiss, but I felt his breath skim the edge of my jaw, just beneath my ear. His voice came low, rough velvet. "I didn't mean to see you," he said. "But now I can't forget." I didn't answer. My mouth was dry, and my pulse throbbed in places I didn't know could ache like that. Instead, I closed my eyes, just for a second, and let myself feel everything. The thrill, the danger, the overwhelming gravity of desire unspoken for too long. And when I opened them, his other hand was lifting too. We were past the point of no return. His fingertips moved like they were tracing a memory. Something he'd imagined once, but never believed he'd be allowed to touch. Each inch he claimed felt like a question, and every soft gasp I gave was the answer. He was still behind me. No kisses. No words. Just his hands, reverent, warm, searching. They slid over my waist, slow and sure, mapping the lines of my body like a man trying to remember a dream before it vanished. The mirror caught it all, the way I closed my eyes, the way his jaw tightened, the way his hands hesitated, then wandered. He was careful, like he thought he might break something if he moved too fast. But it was already broken. The boundary. The silence. Me. My breath stuttered when his palm settled at the base of my back, fingers curling with gentle pressure. It wasn't crude, it wasn't even bold. But somehow it made my knees threaten to fold. He whispered, "Say something." I opened my eyes, looked straight into the mirror, and said nothing. What could I say? That I'd thought about this? That I'd caught him looking before, brief glances in the hallway, held a second too long? That I'd stood under the hot water in the shower wondering what it would be like to feel exactly what I was feeling right now? No, that would make it too real. Instead, I reached for his wrist, not to stop him but to guide him. Our eyes met again in the reflection. This time something cracked. In him. In me. In whatever thin layer of propriety we were still pretending to hide behind. "I shouldn't be here," he murmured. "You are." My voice surprised me. Low. Certain. A little breathless. He stepped closer, his chest against my back now, arms wrapping around me like they had a mind of their own. I felt him exhale into my neck, and in that second the tension between us turned to fire. Everything burned, and still no kiss. We were suspended in heat, in restraint, in the delicious madness of almost. His hands traveled slowly up my stomach, under the edge of my ribcage until they met skin. I gasped softly. His thumbs traced circles there, careful, like he was trying to soothe the storm he was helping create. "This isn't what I expected," he whispered, his lips brushing the shell of my ear. "Then stop." He didn't move. "Didn't think so," I said. I didn't recognize myself in that moment. Bold. Unapologetic. A little wicked. But I also didn't care. Because the girl in the mirror? She wasn't waiting anymore. His hands paused. I felt it, that edge where everything could either fall apart or fall deeper. His breath was warm against my skin, but he wasn't moving. Not yet. And then I felt it. Not his lips. Not yet. His nose brushed against the curve of my neck, slow, reverent. Like he was inhaling me, not perfume, not sweat, me. Something shifted inside me at that. Something deep and quiet that didn't have a name. Then his lips touched my shoulder. Not a kiss. A whisper. My whole body pulled tight like a string winding around a center I couldn't find. His mouth lingered there, still and soft, and when he pulled away, goosebumps followed. His hands, still resting low on my ribs, flexed like he was holding himself back from something bigger, wilder. I turned. Finally. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't some movie spin. I just faced him. Slowly. Like peeling away the last layer of fear. And there he was, real solid, breathing as hard as I was. His eyes scanned my face, searching. Not for permission. For truth. And he found it. I nodded. That was all it took. His mouth met mine. Not hungry, not soft, but desperate. Desperate in the way people kiss when they think it might be the only time. Like everything they've held back is spilling out at once. He cupped my face like he was afraid I'd disappear. His thumb dragging slowly beneath my jaw, grounding me. I kissed him back with everything I had. The months of curiosity, the nights I wondered. The heat of the last few minutes threatening to devour us both. The world narrowed to nothing but the taste of him. The way his hands pulled me in. How our bodies seemed to recognize something our minds hadn't dared admit. And still there was something tender in the chaos. He pulled back, breath ragged. His forehead rested against mine. I've thought about this, he said, voice hoarse. I closed my eyes. So have I. It hung between us. Dangerous. Honest. He didn't ask what it meant. Neither did I. Because something had changed. We both felt it. The mirror behind us reflected only part of the truth now. The rest was happening right here, skin to skin, breath to breath, thought to thought. His hands were on my hips, but his mouth had found that place just below my ear where breath became tremble. I don't remember moving back toward the mirror, but suddenly we were there again. Only this time together. His chest pressed to my back, his arms wrapped tight around my waist. He kissed the side of my neck like it was a confession, slow and aching. I watched us in the mirror. The way my body leaned into his. The way his lips moved over my skin like a secret prayer. It was surreal, like watching someone else make a mistake you couldn't look away from. But this didn't feel like a mistake. It felt inevitable. I turned my head slightly, enough to feel the tip of his nose brush mine. His eyes were heavy, dark with something that wasn't quite lust. It was deeper than that. Need maybe. Or something older. Something neither of us wanted to name yet. I don't know what this is, he whispered, voice low, uneven. I don't either. But I can't stop. You haven't, I said. That earned a soft smile from him, crooked, wrecked, and he kissed me again. This one was deeper, slower, like he was trying to memorize the way I tasted when I was breathless. But then we heard it. The sound of the front door. We both froze. It wasn't loud, just the click of the latch. But it shattered the moment like glass. My stomach dropped. My eyes flew to the mirror, wild and sharp, and I saw the panic flash across his face too. My roommate. His sister. We didn't move. Didn't even breathe. Footsteps in the hallway. He stepped back, barely, his hands sliding away like they'd been burned, but not before dragging across my skin one last time. My body felt suddenly bare in the worst way. Not undressed but unwrapped. Exposed. I reached for my shirt on the floor and pulled it over my head in one fluid motion, heart slamming against my ribs like a warning bell. He moved to the other side of the room, pretending to scroll through his phone, like he hadn't just kissed me, like I was the center of his gravity. The door to my room creaked open slightly. Hey, her voice called lightly. You guys seen my charger? He was the one who answered. Calm. Easy. Nope, he said. Try the kitchen drawer. Her footsteps retreated. The silence that followed was unbearable. I turned to him. We can't do this. He looked at me like I just said something untrue. But we already did. I told myself it was just curiosity. A simple glance. But even as my fingers slid over the worn leather cover, I knew I had no excuse. I shouldn't have opened it. But I did. His journal was tucked beneath his bed, half hidden beneath a hoodie like it had something to hide. I hadn't planned to find it. I dropped my necklace during a rushed moment, and in retracing my steps, there it was. Waiting. The first few pages were harmless. Notes. Lists. Fragments of song lyrics. Then I saw my name. Not once. Not in passing. A full paragraph. Then another. I read slowly, heart pounding. His handwriting was sharp, slanted. Like someone who was always trying not to say too much but failed on the page. She doesn't know what she does to me. The way she moves around the apartment like the air belongs to her. I hear her laugh through the wall sometimes, and I have to close my eyes just to stop imagining the way her mouth looks when she says my name. I sat down. My legs felt weak. There were more entries. One from a few weeks ago. The night I'd worn that thin gray tank top in the kitchen barefoot humming to myself. He wrote about the way the light hit my collarbone. How he couldn't stop staring. How he'd had to leave the room before he did something he couldn't take back. And the night in the mirror? He'd written about that too. I saw her. She knew. She let me. I don't think I'll ever come back from that. I pressed my palm against the page, heart thundering. It wasn't just a crush. It wasn't lust either. He felt something. That changed everything. Because I had to. I closed the journal. My breath was shaky. My reflection in the window looked like someone else. Flushed, raw, alive. The door creaked behind me. He stood there. Silent. His eyes fell to the journal still in my hands. I didn't hide it. You wrote about me, I said. He didn't deny it. Didn't even flinch. I didn't think you'd ever read it, he said quietly. But I meant every word. The room felt suddenly too full of breath, of history, of all the words we hadn't said aloud. I stepped toward him. He didn't move. Do you still feel it? I asked. His answer was a whisper. Every damn second. I didn't speak. Neither did he. The journal sat between us like a confession that had already been answered. And in that quiet, something softened. Not the heat that was still there. A low thrum beneath every breath, but the fear. I stepped closer. This time there was no hesitation. No mirror. No illusion of distance. He reached for me slow like I might vanish. But I didn't. I leaned in. Let him touch me like he'd written about. Gently, reverently. Like he knew exactly how long he'd waited for this. His hands cupped my face, and when he kissed me it wasn't hungry. It was honest. It was the kind of kiss that says I see you. That says I've always seen you. I melted into him. Not just because of the way his body felt against mine, or the way his fingers threaded through my hair like they belonged there, but because every wall I'd built between want and permission had finally cracked. We sank onto the edge of the bed, wrapped in the kind of silence that only exists when two people finally stop pretending. He held me like I was something precious. I ran my hands over his back, his shoulders, the curve of his neck, not to possess but to remember. His breath was hot against my collarbone. Mine was caught in my throat. Every movement was unhurried. Every touch felt earned. He whispered my name once like it hurt. I answered with a kiss that said I know. Clothes slipped away, slow and uncertain. Not with the urgency of lust, but the gravity of something more complicated. We touched like we were learning each other from memory. Every brush of skin a sentence. Every sigh a secret. And when our bodies met fully, tangled, breathless, shaking, it wasn't about surrender. It was about recognition. After we lay tangled in each other, his hand tracing lazy shapes against my spine. The window was cracked, and a breeze fluttered across the sheets, cool against overheated skin. He kissed my forehead and said, I don't want this to be a mistake. I turned toward him, eyes soft. Then don't let it be. And in that moment I realized, this wasn't a mistake. It was a beginning. Whatever came next, the complications, the risk, the fallout, we'd already crossed the line. Not just physically, emotionally, intimately. He hadn't looked away. And I hadn't asked him to. And I never would.